Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 60th edition of the Monte-Carlo Television Festival. My guest today is a writer, director, and producer known for creating some of the most iconic shows in TV history. Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place, Sex and the City, Younger, and Emily in Paris. Here in Monaco, he received an honorary Golden Nymph to pay tribute to his incredible career. Darren Starr, hello.
Hello.
How did it feel to be up on stage getting an award at this point in your career?
I mean, I love it. I feel like, let's call it a mid-career award. That's how I like to think of it. But it was fantastic. It's quite an honor.
And you have such a love affair with France. We can see it in your show, Emily in Paris. It's shooting now the second season.
Yes.
What's something different about this season that might surprise the fans?
I think there's just, there are some new characters that come in. I think that the first season I like to think of sort of the beginning of a movie. You know, it's just the setup. And I really feel like the action sort of begins in season 2.
Are you shooting outside of Paris?
We shot outside of Paris. We shot in the south of France for a couple of weeks. So yes, we sort of began filming there. It was beautiful. I just think part of this show is sort of showing off the beauty of France, and there's just a lot of eye candy in this season. It's just sort of I think for the viewers to just live vicariously.
What is it about France that you love so much?
You know, I just think it's a beautiful country, beautiful culture, and it's so different from the U.S. And I think that's what makes this show an interesting show to write, because it's about the cultural differences that this character Emily experiences, and also how the culture and the experience of living in France has an effect on her.
Emily Cooper?
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I got a feeling I'm in trouble when I look at you.
I'm Emily, your new neighbor.
Enchanté.
'Cause once I do it, yeah, I know I'll never get enough.
So, you've come to teach the French some American tricks?
Never get enough.
Has anyone noticed this is a very dysfunctional workplace?
I think you're the one bringing the drama.
Now, you know, French critics were not the kindest with the first season of Emily in Paris, saying that it didn't show the real Paris. How painful was that, knowing how much you love France?
Oh, it didn't hurt at all. I think that sometimes the critics miss the sense of humor in the show. I don't think they realize it's not a documentary and that we're making fun of American cliches and French cliches, and that was the point. The point was to include the cliches. So I think you have to watch the show with a sense of humor and understand the spirit in which it's intended.
Do you remember your first trip to France?
My first trip to France when I was 19, I was backpacking through Europe by myself. And I landed in Paris and just fell in love with it. And I've been back so many times since, including spending some months here, researching, imagining what it would be like to sort of live and work here, and sort of being that Emily character, living in an apartment, going to French class, living sort of like this sort of like real life in Paris. And so I encountered a lot of the cliches myself. So
I was going to say, what was the biggest Emily in Paris moment you had?
I've had a number of them. I've had some certainly. I've come up against language barriers. I was the person not understanding the difference between the first floor and the second floor. I think that French people maybe can't underestimate the cluelessness of Americans when they come over here.
For so many people around the world, the show they most associate you with is Sex and the City. Why do you think that show touched such a chord with so many people?
You know, I think Sex and the City really was the first show to represent adult relationships in a really frank, honest, funny way. And it's because we were able to do it on HBO, which didn't have any content restrictions. And, you know, for me, Sex and the City, when I started out with, I just thought it was going to be like an independent film for television. I'd had a lot of big commercial success with Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place, and I wanted to do something that felt more real and personal. And I think it was kind of a shock in a way, because people hadn't really seen something like that before, that in its frankness was so relatable and, in fact, universal.
Sex and the City pushed so many boundaries. What would you say is one scene or a line where even you said they're never going to go for it?
Almost all of them at the beginning, but they did. So, you know, I think the rest is history. They were very supportive and letting us do what we wanted, and you know, just sort of like letting us, our own sort of good or bad taste, guide us.
You started your first big hit, Beverly Hills 90210, was so many years ago, 30 years ago?
So many years ago.
How has
Yes.
television changed since then?
I started it on the fourth network, Fox, and I was a screenwriter, young screenwriter at the time, not very interested in television because back then, if you were writing movies, you didn't do television. But Fox was this promising network that was like going to be different, more relevant to younger viewers, and so Beverly Hills 90210 is going to be a show that appealed to those viewers, and it was going to have like an edgier point of view. So at the time, there were 4 networks, and that was it. There weren't any cable shows. Since then, it's just been like it just exponentially just like exploded, and now I think TV has become the dominant medium. And I don't even like the idea of calling it TV anymore because I think it kind of like puts it in a box. I think we need a new word to describe TV.
You're a writer. What would that new word be?
I think it's just, it's filmed entertainment. I don't think people differentiate what they're seeing on a screen, whether it's a TV show or a movie. I think it's just all the same.
So many of your shows, Emily in Paris, Sex and the City, Younger, all have these incredible women who are fascinating and flawed, but real women protagonists. Where do you think your knack for writing women comes from?
I write shows where people are talking a lot about their feelings, and I think women tend to be very expressive in that sense. And I've always found it very easy to put myself in the shoes of female characters.
HBO is creating the Sex and the City reboot, which you're not working on,
Right.
if I have it correctly.
Yes.
Is there any part of you that said, oh, I wish I was involved?
I mean, yeah, yes and no. I'm very busy right now, so I just couldn't do it. But it's just like it's such a compliment that it still continues, and that there's a passion for it from that the audience wants to see it, and I still have my great creative team doing it. So I'm excited about what's to come.
Now, one person who also turned down the Sex and the City reboot to work on Emily in Paris with you is costume designer Patricia Field, who did so many of those iconic costumes in Sex and the City, like Carrie's tutu skirt that we all remember. How involved are you in the fashion choices in the show, and what kind of effect do they have on the writing?
Well, I love the imagination Patricia brings to wardrobe, and I just think it just kicks everything up to another level, and I think just it adds another layer of just entertainment value. We want the show to be visual, and she thinks in such a visual way about wardrobe, and she thinks about wardrobe with a sense of humor also. And I think I know how much the audience enjoys seeing that.
Is there any show that you wish you had created but didn't?
I mean, I think back to older shows that really influenced me, like the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I just thought it was, to me, that was such a groundbreaking show for its time. Single woman, modern. With my son, I look at old reruns of Star Trek. It was shot in the 60s, and I think, how did they do it back then? And they did 30 episodes a season, and it's amazing, and it still looks good. It still holds up, and it's really just a power to the storytelling also.
Which of your own shows are you proudest of, and why?
I can't pick one.
If you had to.
I cannot pick one. No, I love them all. I really do. I love the ones that didn't become hits that I thought were, underrated, like, Grosse Pointe, which is a show that was on the WB, Kitchen Confidential with Bradley Cooper. I think when you do a series, you just have to love it. You have to love it with all your heart when you're doing it because you put so much of yourself into it.
Here we are at the TV festival in Monaco. What show do you binge watch the most?
Wow, I don't have time to binge watch a lot. I just started watching Hacks with Gene Smart, which I'm really enjoying.
How's it going in Vegas? You and Deborah Vance, Thelma and Louise yet, or what?
No, but I do want to drive off a cliff.
Okay, you ready to do some work? Let's see. Feet, toes, pedicure. Wow. It's like watching Picasso sing.
You mean paint?
No.
I want to watch Lupin. I've got so much on my watch list. It's a very, very long watch list.
Lupin, kind of the exact opposite in a lot of ways to Emily in Paris.
I don't know. I know we keep running into them on locations. So we keep thinking, well, maybe there's a crossover here.
Why not? Could be a scoop. Darren Starr, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're gonna use this kid as bait. They'll come right to us.
Listen, I know this guy. And he's not going to give up. I'll make him pay for this.
The sun is shining, the beaches and bars are beckoning, and for our latest edition of Europe Now, we are in the European country that relies most heavily on tourism for its national wealth. We are in Greece, looking at the health crisis, the wider economic picture, and where things stand in terms of irregular migration.
Europe Now, presented by Catherine Nicholson on France 24 and France24.com.
Football is coming home on France 24. Follow our Euro 2020 show on every match day. All the drama, all the results, and of course, in-depth analysis of your favourite teams. It's all on France 24.
Watch events unfold on France 24 and France24.com.